Well, look what we have here. Victoria's voice cut through the air, high-pitched and mocking, like the crack of a whip. Looks like someone took a wrong turn on their way to the neighborhood gym. Her long, red-painted finger pointed directly at the girl. Victoria Sterling had no idea she was about to face the toughest opponent of her career. Victoria Sterling, the two-time reigning female boxing world champion, stood there, perfectly poised in her designer athletic wear, exuding an almost ridiculous arrogance. Her cold, sharp eyes scanned the room, searching for something to entertain her for the dull afternoon. When a timid young woman walked in, Victoria smirked, a half-smile full of challenge. She raised her phone, beginning to record a video for her personal Instagram, where she frequently posted sarcastic comments and shocking statements to attract millions of views. The rhythmic thud of punches on the heavy bag stopped, a sudden and eerie silence falling over the room. All eyes, from curious to annoyed, turned to Kesha Campbell. The 18-year-old Jamaican, with her dark skin, stood tucked into the doorway, out of place in the pristine, expensive gym. The old duffel bag in her hand and her worn-out shoes were a jarring contrast to the flashy glamour around her. The monthly membership fee here was more than a regular worker's 3-month minimum wage. And that fact only made Kesha feel smaller and more isolated. Hundreds of scrutinizing eyes seemed to bore through her fragile exterior, making her heart pound. It wasn't fear, but a feeling of helplessness. The weight of her family and their hopes pressing down on her slender shoulders. Victoria Sterling wasn't just famous for her lethal punches in the ring. She was also known for her sharp tongue and scathing remarks that could take down an opponent before the match even started. At 26, she had built her entire career on controversial statements and social media mockery. Her latest Instagram post, a photo showing off her sculpted muscles, with the caption, "When you're already superior, you don't need to pretend to be equal," had garnered 500,000 likes. She smugly glanced at the phone in her hand, as if to reaffirm her power. Kesha took a small step back, clutching her cracked screen phone. She mumbled, her voice tiny and barely audible, as if apologizing for her very presence. "Sorry," she said, checking the address on the shattered screen. "I thought this was the youth scholarship program." Victoria's laugh echoed through the gym, a shrill and unpleasant sound like an alarm. "A scholarship program? Honey, this isn't a charity. We train real athletes here, not social experiments." Every one of Victoria's words was a needle pricking Kesha's pride. 6 months ago, she had left Kingston, Jamaica, carrying not just a suitcase of clothes, but the dreams of an entire family. Every dollar they had saved was poured into this trip, into her chance at a better life. Now, standing before this blatant arrogance, she felt like she had just stepped into a strange land, where dreams could be trampled at any moment. She worked 16 hours a day, cleaning offices, saving every penny to pay for her cramped shared room in the Bronx. This scholarship program was not just a chance to train, it was a beacon of light. The only way out of the cycle of poverty her family had been trapped in for generations. A firm voice rang out, cutting through the tense atmosphere. It was Tom Rodriguez, the veteran coach and gym owner. He emerged from his office, a folder in his hand, his eyes sharp but holding a rare warmth. "The program is real," he said assertively, "and Kesha Campbell is on the approved list." Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically, her face a picture of disbelief. "Are you serious, Tom? Are you going to turn my training facility into an NGO? My sponsors won't like this at all." Tom replied dryly, without emotion. "Your sponsors pay for results, not for your opinions on who gets to train here." But Victoria wasn't about to back down. She gritted her teeth, her half-smile gone, replaced by a menacing glare. She moved closer to Kesha, her tall figure like a wall. "You know what? If you want to train with the best, why don't we prove if you're actually worthy of being here?" The gym fell into absolute silence. Everyone held their breath, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Kesha felt all eyes on her, an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. She knew this was a trap, a public humiliation designed to break her will before she could even begin. But in Kesha's dark eyes, a small flame began to ignite. a fire that Victoria, in her smugness, completely failed to notice. It was the flame of resilience, of pride, and of a dream that could not be extinguished. A friendly match, Victoria continued, savoring each word, as if tasting Kesha's fear. You fight me, 3 rounds. If you last, you can stay. If not, she made a dismissive hand gesture, implying Kesha would disappear without a trace, remembered by no one. Kesha looked up at Victoria, her gaze unwavering. A faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared on her lips, a mysterious smile that Victoria couldn't understand. She was used to insults, to looks of contempt. In Kingston, she had learned that sometimes silence and a smile were the most powerful weapons. I accept, Kesha said calmly, her voice surprisingly steady. Victoria frowned, waiting for tears or pleas, but there was nothing, only a strange determination. Are you sure? Because when I'm done with you, you'll wonder if it was worth dreaming so big. I'm sure, Kesha repeated, emphasizing each word. And for the first time since she had walked into the room, Kesha smiled. It was no longer timid, but confident, a silent declaration of war. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that she was about to find out why. In the slums of Kingston, Jamaica, Kesha Campbell was known by a very special nickname, Lightning. And like all lightning, she only revealed her true power when the storm hit. While Victoria planned to turn this humiliation into viral social media content, Tom Rodriguez saw the unyielding light in Kesha's eyes. He felt a familiar sensation, the feeling he used to get when he discovered a special talent hidden beneath a fragile exterior, a rough diamond waiting to be polished. News of the friendly match spread through the gym like wildfire. In less than an hour, many fighters, coaches, and even a few sports journalists had arrived. A mix of curiosity and morbid excitement filled the air. Victoria Sterling, the champion, against an unknown Jamaican girl. This promised to be the kind of cruel entertainment that social media always craved. 3 rounds, 16-ounce gloves, Tom Rodriguez stipulated, his voice somewhat reluctant, as if trying to soften the impending massacre. No betting, no live streaming, just a sparring match. Victoria laughed loudly, her tone mocking. Relax, Tom. It'll be over fast. Probably won't make it past the 2nd round. She had already started filming Instagram stories, telling her 2 million followers, guys, you won't believe what's happening here. Some anonymous girl wants to challenge me. I'm going to teach her a lesson in humility she'll never forget. Comments flooded in like a waterfall, cheering on Victoria's cruelty. Destroy her, Victoria. These people need to know their place. Show them why you're the queen. While Victoria basked in the attention, enjoying every comment and like, Kesha quietly went to the locker room. Her hands weren't shaking. They never shook before a fight. But her heart was pounding with a complex mix of suppressed anger and painful memories she had long tried to bury. Victoria's words were not just a personal insult. They were an insult to her family, her origins, and the silent sacrifices she carried on her shoulders. Kesha's eyes looked tired for a moment, as if she were bracing herself against a fierce wave from the past. Tom followed her. He looked at Kesha with a worried, understanding gaze. Kesha, you don't have to do this. I know the scholarship program is important, but it's not worth getting hurt for her arrogance. Kesha turned, her eyes strangely determined. She looked Tom straight in the eye without a hint of wavering. I won't get hurt. She checked the borrowed gloves, feeling the old material against her hands. Tom Rodriguez looked at Kesha, his eyes full of worry. He had seen many talents flare brightly and then fade, and had witnessed many arrogant people fall because of their overconfidence. Victoria Sterling, as unlikable as she was a world champion, a fighting machine forged by professional technique, knockout power, and ring experience. Kesha, on the other hand, was just an 18-year-old girl with torn shoes and a patchwork dream. She's been world champion for 2 years. She has professional technique, knockout power, and experience, Tom began, his voice full of warning. Kesha cut him off, her eyes looking straight into the veteran coaches with an uncanny determination. "And I have something she'll never have." Tom frowned, curious. "What's that?" "Hunger." The word echoed in the simple locker room like a declaration, a whisper from deep within her soul. Tom Rodriguez had trained hundreds of athletes throughout his 30-year career, but rarely had he heard that word uttered with such intense resolve. There was something in Kesha's eyes, an intensity, a smoldering fire that he had only ever seen in true predators in the ring. People who fought not just with their muscles, but with the sheer will to survive. "Tell me," Tom said, sitting down next to her, his voice softer now, tinged with genuine curiosity. "Why did you accept? Why not just ignore her taunts?" Kesha closed her eyes for a moment, as if to summon a flood of memories. In her mind, the noisy, dusty streets of Kingston came into sharp focus. The sound of her mother shouting, begging her to stop fighting. The feeling of punches landing with surgical precision, not as senseless violence, but as a weapon for survival. The nickname, Lightning, was whispered with both fear and respect in the slums. Not because she was cruel, but because of her speed and her ability to predict her opponent's moves. "Because I've lived this story before," she finally said, her eyes still closed, as if she were looking deep into a distant past. "People like Victoria think they can break us with words, with contempt, with the belief that we are beneath them. But they forget one important thing." "What's that?" Tom asked, his voice low, captivated by the raw truth in her words. Kesha opened her eyes and looked directly at Tom, her gaze burning with a cold light. "People who grow up fighting for survival don't just fight for sport. They fight to live." A chill ran down Tom's spine. There was something prophetic in those words, as if Kesha wasn't just revealing her own deep-seated motivation, but also predicting a certain fate for Victoria. The girl's words weren't a boast, they were a harsh reality, forged by a brutal life. Meanwhile, outside the locker room, Victoria continued her performance for the phone cameras, basking in the attention and praise from the crowd. "Look at her shoes," she scoffed, pointing at Kesha's torn footwear still left in the locker room. "I bet she's never stepped into a real ring. She probably learned to box on YouTube." Laughter echoed through the gym, but a few veteran fighters remained silent. There was something about Kesha's stance, the way she had accepted the challenge without hesitation, that gave them an instinctive sense of caution. They had seen all kinds of fighters, and Kesha's strange composure made them suspicious. Marcus Williams, a former middleweight champion who now trained at the gym, whispered to his sparring partner, his voice thoughtful. "I don't know. I've seen that kind of calm before." Sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous. However, Victoria was too wrapped up in her own arrogance to notice the warning signs. She continued her monologue for the camera, her tone full of contempt. "You know what the problem is with people from third-world countries? They confuse desperation with skill. They think just because life is hard, they automatically know how to fight." Just then, the locker room door opened. Kesha walked out, wearing simple shorts and a tank top. All eyes in the room turned to her, and a wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Her hands, which seemed slender, were unexpectedly toned for someone supposedly new to serious training. Her movements were smooth, economical, like a cat preparing to strike its prey, each step barely seeming to touch the ground. Victoria saw Kesha, the sneer still on her face. "Ready for your lesson?" "Always," Kesha replied, her voice calm and fearless. What Victoria Sterling didn't know and couldn't imagine was that Lightning Campbell had been fighting since she was 8 years old on the streets of Kingston, not for sport or fun, but because it was the only way to avoid starvation. Life had thrown her the harshest lessons, and she had learned how to fight back to survive. By the age of 12, she was beating boys 3 years older than her in underground matches, earning enough money for her family to get by for another week. By the age of 16, she had become a local legend, not for her cruelty, but for her ability to anticipate moves and counter with lightning speed, earning the nickname she wore like a scar of honor, a mark of her survival. When she finally got her visa to the US, she swore to herself she would never set foot in the ring again. She wanted a peaceful life, a future without violence. But some promises are made to be broken when one's self-respect is threatened, when harsh stereotypes force people to stand up and defend their worth. Tom adjusted Kesha's gloves, noticing something that surprised him. Her hands were completely relaxed, without a hint of tension, yet her muscles had the firmness of someone who had trained their entire life. Not the rough calluses, but the underlying dormant strength. "Kesha, can I ask you something?" Tom asked carefully. "Sure." "Have you really never fought before?" Kesha smiled for the first time since she arrived at the gym. A small, almost imperceptible smile that held secrets that could rewrite the entire situation. "Define fight," she replied, a glint of mischief and a hint of a challenge in her eyes. In that moment, while Victoria continued her social media performance and the crowd secretly wagered on how long this amateur girl would last, something extraordinary was about to happen. Because sometimes, when we underestimate someone based on their appearance and prejudices, we find that the true predators are the ones who have learned to conceal their power until the exact moment to unleash it. While Victoria Sterling continued her social media campaign of humiliation, having posted 17 stories mocking the amateur Jamaican girl, something completely different was unfolding behind the scenes at the gym. Tom Rodriguez, with his 30 years of experience training fighters, decided to look into Kesha Campbell. He knew that true strength rarely made a sound, and there was something about this young woman that defied every logic he knew. Her hands didn't have the calluses of a novice. Her reflexes were too fast, an unnatural fluidity for someone who had supposedly never trained. Kesha's composure, surrounded by curious eyes and Victoria's arrogance, was the most unusual thing of all. It wasn't shallow confidence, but a profound stillness, like a lake surface reflecting the sky while hiding an unfathomable depth. "Kesha!" Tom called out as she finished adjusting her gloves, his voice slightly hesitant. "Can I see you do a few basic drills, just so I can assess your level?" What happened in the next 5 minutes made Tom question everything he thought he knew about natural talent. Kesha moved around the ring with a grace that seemed to defy gravity, each step light and precise. Her punches on the heavy bag were surgically accurate, a sharpness he had only ever seen in fighters with decades of experience, people who had honed their skills through countless matches. "My God," Tom muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on Kesha, unable to look away. Who is this girl, really? A feeling of excitement and curiosity rose in him, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. Just then the gym door opened and a man walked in, causing Kesha to freeze. It was Winston Campbell, a 50-year-old man with scarred hands, a testament to a hard life, and eyes that had seen too much pain. He was her uncle, who had flown in from Miami the moment he heard about the fight from a mutual cousin. Winston walked slowly, his sharp eyes scanning the room, then stopping on Kesha. "Lightning," he said simply, but the nickname echoed through the gym like a gunshot, making the air thick with tension. A few of the older fighters frowned, as if trying to recall where they had heard that name before, a distant memory trying to push its way into their minds. "Uncle Winston, what are you doing here?" Kesha asked, her voice for the first time showing a trace of worry, a hint of vulnerability Tom had never seen. "I came to see if my niece has completely lost her mind," he replied in a thick but stern Jamaican accent. "I thought we agreed that those days were over." Tom, intrigued, moved closer, sensing a much bigger story was about to unfold. "You two know each other?" Winston looked at Tom with the face of a man weighing his words, deciding how much to reveal. Finally, he nodded. "I've known this girl since she was 8, and I can assure you, Victoria Sterling has no idea what she's about to face." His eyes settled on Victoria, then shifted back to Kesha, as if seeing an entire hidden history. While this mysterious conversation took place in a corner of the ring, Victoria, on the other side of the gym, was still recording content for TikTok, completely oblivious to what was happening. "Look, everyone," she whispered to the camera, her tone so mocking it was sickening. She even brought her family to watch her get humiliated. Isn't that adorable? They'll have a lot to comfort her about later. The comments on her post exploded, filled with cruel encouragement. "Victoria's going to destroy that girl. Teach her not to mess with an American. Show her what real boxing is. Winston watched Victoria for a few seconds, then shook his head with disgust. Arrogant. The exact type of person Lightning used to deal with. What's the word? She taught them humility on the streets of Kingston. Uncle, please, Kesha pleaded, her voice small, a hint of fear in it. Don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know. She looked at Tom, her eyes begging him. Know what? Tom asked, his curiosity growing, sensing a big secret was being kept. Winston let out a deep sigh, his eyes thoughtful. Tom, can I call you Tom? You seem like a decent man. So I'm going to tell you something that might change how you see this fight. He gestured toward Kesha, who was training alone in the corner, her punches still strong and precise. That girl over there was once considered the best street fighter Kingston ever produced. Street fighter, Tom repeated, his eyes wide with shock. By 12, she was beating men 3 times her size. By 15, she had a reputation that commanded respect from gangsters. Winston paused, letting his words sink in. Lightning Campbell isn't just a nickname. It's a warning, he continued, his voice filled with pride and a touch of regret. She stopped fighting when she got her visa to come here. She swore she'd never step into the ring again. Tom looked at Kesha with a completely new perspective. Shock mixed with admiration was evident in his eyes. Then why did she agree to fight Victoria? Because, Winston said, his tone turning serious, some people confuse kindness with weakness. And Lightning will never accept being looked down upon for her skin color, her gender, or her background. Winston's words rang out like an indictment of Victoria's arrogance. On the other side of the gym, Victoria had just finished a series of mocking posts about Kesha and was on the phone with her manager, Michael. Michael, this match is going to go viral. The world champ against some amateur. Her voice was full of excitement, imagining how she would dominate the media. This is exactly the kind of content sponsors love. Total domination. Just make sure you don't hurt her too badly, Victoria. The manager's voice came through the speakerphone, sounding slightly worried. We don't want a lawsuit for assault. Victoria laughed, loudly, contemptuously. Michael, relax. It'll be over fast. She won't even have time to hurt herself. Seriously? Winston overheard the conversation. He narrowed his eyes, a flicker of anger flashing within them. Tom, can I give you some advice? Bet on Lightning. Why? Tom asked, though he already knew the answer in his heart. Because Victoria Sterling may be a world champion, but she has never had to fight for survival. She has never faced someone where losing meant not having anything to eat. Lightning isn't here for show. She's here to prove a point. Winston looked toward Victoria, his eyes as cold as ice. Just then, Kesha walked up to them, sweat beading on her face after her intense training, but her eyes remained resolute. Uncle Winston? What are you telling Tom? The truth, kid, Winston replied, his voice full of a knowing undertone. That you're not the helpless victim this American girl thinks you are. Kesha looked around the gym, noticing that a few other fighters were now looking at her with new curiosity and respect. She felt a little embarrassed, but also a little proud. Uncle, I really didn't want what? To show them who you really are? Lightning, Winston interrupted, his voice firm, as if urging her to face her true self. You've spent the last few months cleaning toilets because you wanted to start a new life. But when someone tries to humiliate you for your skin, your background, or your past, no new life can erase what's in your blood. Winston's words were a powerful and emotional awakening. A chill ran down Tom's spine. He understood that this was not just a match, but a fight for honor, for existence. Kesha, can I ask you, why did you really agree to this fight? Kesha was silent for a long moment, staring at Victoria, who was still recording content on the other side of the gym, completely unaware of the hidden power she was about to face. When she finally spoke, her voice had a hardness Tom had never heard before, an iron determination, because people like Victoria Sterling think they can belittle us, humiliate us, and put us in our place just based on our skin color or where we came from. She looks at me and sees an easy victim, a story for her social media, a joke to entertain her followers. Kesha paused, her eyes burning with an inextinguishable fire. She doesn't know that where I grew up, respect wasn't given, it was earned. Kesha smiled, but the smile was no longer innocent or timid. It held a menacing quality, like a flash of light before a storm. And when someone tries to take away our dignity, well, sometimes lightning has to remind people why a storm is something to be feared. Kesha's words were like a clap of thunder, signaling what was to come. In that moment, as Victoria Sterling continued her arrogant performance for the camera, completely unaware of the conversation that was changing everything just feet away, everyone in the gym realized they were about to witness something far beyond a simple sparring match. It was the moment when years of silent humiliation finally found its voice, not through words, but through the fists of a person who had learned on the toughest streets in the world. It was the moment when the only language some people understand is power applied with surgical precision, not to destroy, but to awaken. The bell rang, sharp and decisive, cutting through the tense air. The two fighters met in the center of the ring. Victoria, with the blind confidence of a winner, immediately went on the offensive, throwing a series of lightning-fast punches that tore through the air where Kesha had been a millisecond before. "What the hell?" Victoria mumbled, frowning as her punches found nothing but empty space. Kesha moved like smoke, always a step ahead, always out of reach. Her feet glided across the ring with a physics-defying grace, as if she could predict every move before Victoria could even think of it, each dodge a calculated dance. "Stand still, girl!" Victoria yelled in frustration, her voice a mix of anger and a hint of panic, as her punches grew heavier, adding force in vain. Then it happened. In the exact moment Victoria lost her balance after a miscalculated cross, Kesha countered. As fast as a lightning strike, her left punch connected with the side of Victoria's face with a sharp, clean sound that silenced all other noise in the gym. Victoria staggered backward, touching her face with a look of disbelief. She had never been hit with such precision by a smaller opponent, much less by someone she had called a social experiment. "No way," she whispered. But Kesha was already moving. The young woman gave Victoria no second to catch her breath. What followed was a martial arts masterclass that left the entire gym in absolute silence. Kesha wasn't just fighting. She was conducting a symphony of controlled violence. Each note, a punch, a movement. Every punch was meticulously calculated with nothing extra, nothing wasted. Every movement had a clear purpose, not a single wasted action. Each dodge seemed choreographed, smooth and perfect. Victoria, in desperation, tried to use her weight and reach advantage, but it was like trying to catch lightning with her bare hands. For every punch she landed, she took 3 in return. For every step forward, Kesha had anticipated and countered, making Victoria a complete puppet in her hands. "Who is this girl?" someone in the crowd yelled, a mix of shock and admiration in their voice. Winston smiled from where he stood watching, his eyes full of pride. "Lightning Campbell," he murmured, as a reminder that a legend had been reborn. The moment of truth arrived in the second round. Victoria, now out of breath and her face bruised, realized she had made the biggest mistake of her career. Her arrogant social media posts were still being shared, but now the comments had completely changed their tone, from cheers to merciless mockery. Victoria's getting destroyed by an amateur. "Where's the world champ now? That Jamaican girl is demolishing her." Jerry, her manager, screamed frantic instructions from her corner, but Victoria could barely hear him over the roar of the crowd, which was now openly cheering against her. Humiliation began to engulf her, heavier than any punch. That's when Kesha decided to show her true colors. She didn't need to say much. "Lightning isn't just a nickname," she said calmly, stepping closer to Victoria, who was backing up against the ropes, her eyes full of panic. "It's a warning." The next combination was so fast that the phone cameras could barely keep up. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. 4 punches in less than 2 seconds, all of them landed with surgical precision, no wasted motion. No wasted time. Victoria collapsed to the floor like a building being demolished with no strength left to fight back. The gym erupted. People screamed, cheered, filming everything for social media as if they had witnessed a miracle. Victoria tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't obey, her body broken by exhaustion and humiliation. For the first time in her life, the undefeated champion was knocked out by someone she had called a social experiment. Someone she had belittled and tried to humiliate. 10! Tom yelled, acting as the referee for the match, his voice echoing throughout the room. Knockout. Kesha calmly walked to the corner where Victoria was being tended to. She looked at her opponent without a hint of triumph, only serenity and a little sadness. "You said you wanted to teach me a lesson," she said softly, her voice clear amid the noise. "I hope you learned that respect isn't earned by skin color, nationality, or bank account. It's earned by character." Kip. Victoria looked at Kesha with eyes filled with tears of humiliation, and for the first time there was something that resembled respect, a bitter acceptance of the truth. Jerry rushed over to check Victoria's phone. Her mocking stories about Kesha had gone viral, but now for a completely different reason. Thousands of comments mocking her arrogance flooded social media. Victoria got demolished by the amateur she called a project. This is what happens when prejudice meets reality. Lightning Campbell had ended Victoria's career in 3 rounds, not with brute force, but with intellect and will. "Oh my God, Victoria," Jerry said, handing her the phone, his voice trembling with shock. "You have to see this. Your account lost 100,000 followers in the last hour. The sponsors are pulling out." Victoria took the phone with shaking hands, her eyes staring blankly at the screen. Her last post, mocking Kesha, had become a monument to her own humiliation. The comments were merciless. "The one who laughs last, laughs best." The Jamaican girl taught that racist a lesson. Lightning Campbell, victorious arrogance. Tom walked over to Kesha, who was being cheered by the crowd like a conquering hero. Kesha looked at Victoria, who was still being helped up, completely defeated both physically and mentally. A slight, thoughtful smile appeared on Kesha's lips. Because sometimes people need to dig their own grave before they understand the size of the hole they've pushed themselves into. Winston hugged his niece proudly, his arms tightening around her in a gesture of affirmation. "You're still lightning." "No, Uncle," Kesha replied, watching as Victoria was led out of the gym amid a barrage of sarcastic comments and pitying looks. "Lightning was who I needed to be to survive. Today I showed them who I really am. Someone who won't accept disrespect but fights for dignity, not out of cruelty." As cameras continued to roll and the video of the knockout went viral on social media, a question lingered in the air. Could a single fight rewrite not only 2 careers, but also how a community views prejudice, privilege, and the true measure of human strength? 3 months after that fateful match, the contrast in the lives of Victoria Sterling and Kesha Campbell couldn't have been more stark. Victoria Sterling, once the undefeated world champion, now lived in a small apartment she rented after losing her luxurious mansion in Miami. Her life had completely turned upside down. Sponsors had canceled all their contracts after the video of the match reached 50 million views in just 1 week. The clip, Victoria Sterling demolished by the woman she called an amateur, became the most shared meme of the year, turning her arrogance into a global joke. Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, all the brands that once paid her millions of dollars for her image, now wouldn't even return her calls. Jerry, her former manager, had made it clear in their final conversation. "Victoria, you don't get it. It's not just the fight you lost, it's who you showed yourself to be. No one wants to associate their brand with prejudice and arrogance." Jerry's words were a verdict, ending a glorious chapter in Victoria's life and leaving only emptiness and regret behind. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Kesha Campbell had signed her first professional contract with Golden Gloves Promotions. The contract was worth $2 million for her first 3 fights, with an extension clause that could go up to $50 million if she maintained her performance. Lightning Campbell had not only become a sports phenomenon, but also a symbol of resilience and the will to overcome adversity. Brands that valued authenticity and inspirational stories were lining up to sponsor her. Under Armour quickly launched a product line inspired by her story, named Earned, Not Given. It was a powerful message that accurately reflected Kesha's journey. Tom Rodriguez was in his gym office when he received a surprising call. "Hello, Tom, this is ESPN. We want to do a documentary about how you discovered Lightning Campbell." "I didn't discover anything," Tom replied honestly, a slight smile on his face. "She always knew who she was. She just needed someone to respect her before they saw her fists in action." The gym's transformation was just as dramatic. The scholarship program, once a small initiative Tom struggled to maintain, now received donations from all over the country. Young people from disadvantaged communities, inspired by Kesha's story, poured in every day. The waiting list had more than 500 names, all eager for a chance like Kesha's. Winston, Campbell, Kesha's uncle, visited his niece often, always with a sparkle of pride in his eyes. "Remember what I said about hunger?" he asked during one visit. "You proved it's not where we come from, but the fire inside us." As for Victoria, she made several attempts to salvage her image. She created a YouTube channel to apologize, posting videos full of remorse, but the comments were unforgiving. The internet has a long memory, and her arrogance had left too deep a scar. She tried to return to boxing, but no major promoter would accept her terms. Her image had become inextricably linked with defeat and prejudice. Her savings quickly evaporated without sponsorship income. In a desperate interview for a third-rate podcast, Victoria finally said the words she should have said months ago, a bitter confession. "I was completely wrong. Kesha Campbell isn't just an excellent fighter, she's a person I should have respected from the very beginning. My prejudice blinded me to her greatness." But the internet, with its rapid spread, turned that apology clip into a new meme. Victoria tries to apologize after losing everything. Her remorse meant nothing now that it was too late. Kesha, upon hearing about the interview, showed the class that had always set her apart. "I'm not angry at her," she said in an interview with Sports Illustrated, her voice calm and full of grace. "Anger only consumes the one who holds it. I'd rather use my energy to build bridges for young girls like me." Her foundation, Lightning Dreams, had already helped 300 young girls from disadvantaged communities receive scholarships and athletic opportunities, opening doors to a future that had once seemed impossible. The foundation's first gym was opened in Kingston, Jamaica, in the very community where she had discovered that her fists could be more than just a weapon for survival. At the grand opening, which was live-streamed globally, Kesha held the microphone with the same hands that had knocked out a world champion. "This story isn't about revenge," she said, her voice echoing through the speakers. "It's about dignity. It's about proving that respect isn't earned by privilege, but by character." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound filling the room. But she wasn't finished. "Victoria Sterling gave me the greatest gift of her life. She underestimated me, and when someone underestimates you, you have a choice." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the audience. "You can let it destroy you, or you can use it as fuel to become invincible." Tom Rodriguez, watching from the front row, discreetly wiped away a tear. He had trained champions for decades, but he had never seen anyone turn humiliation into inspiration with such elegance and power. A few months later, when Lightning Campbell became the undisputed world champion, knocking out her opponent in the second round, just as she had beaten Victoria, The first person she thanked in her speech wasn't her coach or her family. "I want to thank all the people who tried to put me down, humiliate me, and put me in my place. You taught me that real strength doesn't come from where we're born or the color of our skin. It comes from the absolute refusal to let others define our limits." Victoria Sterling watched the fight on television in her rented apartment, alone. As the referee raised Kesha's hand, declaring her the new world champion, Victoria finally understood the difference between talent and greatness. One can be born with talent, but greatness is forged in the furnace of adversity, in life's harshest challenges. Kesha Campbell didn't just win a fight in a Manhattan gym. She had rewritten the rules of what it means to be strong, to be worthy of respect, and most importantly, that the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy, but about becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And while Lightning Campbell shone in the spotlight of global success, she proved that some storms don't destroy, but cleanse and strengthen. It was a lesson that resonated with anyone who has ever been underestimated, humiliated, or put down. Never let anyone define your limits based on their prejudice. The greatest victory is proving them completely wrong about who you truly are. From the streets of Kingston to the top of the world, Kesha Campbell didn't just win a title, she earned the world's respect and taught an arrogant champion a costly lesson. Her strength didn't come from her punches, but from the fire in her heart. She proved that the greatest victory is becoming yourself, no matter what prejudices you face. Have you ever overcome adversity to prove yourself? Share your story in the comments and let's spread the message of resilience together. Inspired by Lightning Campbell's story? Subscribe now so you don't miss out on more powerful stories and incredible fights.